Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mental Health Gaming Podcast. As usual, I'm Bradley and I'm joined by both Ben
Hello.
and Stu.
Hey up.
How are we doing, guys?
Good, thanks.
Yeah, not too bad, thank you.
Excellent. So, I've had quite a busy week of games again. You guys been playing much, or you still on the fighting genre, Ben, or something different?
Oh, something very different for me this week. So I was in Budapest over the weekend and had the opportunity to go to the Budapest Pinball Museum, which I'll add a link, or we'll add a link to the podcast notes. Apparently, it's the largest interactive pinball museum in Europe. You pay around £9 to get in and then have unlimited credits on over 130 machines, including a small collection of the bagatelles, which are the predecessor to modern pinball tables. And then the pinball collection, it dates right back to the 1930s and 40s. Some really very simple, very basic, but immensely charming machines. It really is it's set in a basement as well, so it's kind of like a dusty archive for pinball history, although not that dusty. They do keep it very clean. And I've long held a fascination with pinball tables, probably since seeing the poster for Tommy, which used to terrify me as a kid. I just think there's something inherently cool about them, even though I'm no way, I'm in no way good at playing them. I'm pretty terrible. But with unlimited credits at the Pinball Museum, that didn't really matter. It was a really cool way to spend a couple of hours and just kind of get lost in this.
There's something really cool about the mechanics of a pinball table.
Yeah, and just getting lost among them in what is a really impressive collection, like a really impressive piece of gaming history. I mean, so random that it's on a really quiet street in Budapest. And it's somewhere, not everyone's going to get to go to Budapest, but if you ever happen to be there, I would thoroughly recommend checking it out. It's quite nice, just taking a little bit of a step back in time.
Adam's Family was my favourite.
Yeah, I didn't spot that one. They had Elvira, which fascinated me for different reasons when I was a kid, but
Those are the boobs.
Yeah. All about the boobs.
Back when you was a 12, 13-year-old boy.
28, 29-year-old man.
Or that, yeah. Hell, even into my 40s, yeah.
I mean, I still made a beeline for that table when I walked in, so what that says about me, I'm not really sure.
So how did you come across that then? Was it just by chance, or was it something you actually looked for?
So it was a stag do in Budapest, and by Sunday we'd kind of had enough of sitting in pubs, and yeah, took the chance to just go along. Really glad we did, because one, it wasn't sitting in a pub for another few hours, and yeah, just I suppose it's just the chance to go and catch up on some gaming history was something I couldn't really turn down.
No, those things are built as well because they can take a beating, the old pinball tables as well. That's one thing I've always liked about it. I love digital pinball. I'm not going to lie, and like obviously the stuff that Zen Studios do with Pinball FX and back when Pinball Arcade had the licenses. But you still don't get that feeling of actually smacking the side of a pinball table. You just can't recreate that without actually doing it properly.
And given the choice, like I'd love to have an arcade cabinet, but given the choice between an arcade cabinet and a pinball table, it would be a pinball table probably 9 times out of 10.
Yeah. No, that sounds really cool. You got any pinball experience, Stu, or that something, or are you more digital?
I absolutely love them. The machines, just as you were saying, the tactility of them and the fact that it's entirely mechanical. Well, I know the modern ones have silicon chips in the background doing certain things that I don't understand, but yeah, that tactile impression of the flippers knocking things into other things and having a chain reaction. It's like Screwball Scramble, that little home game, if anyone remembers that.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic tactility to it. I had just on that tangent, Crossfire. I don't know if you ever saw that as well, which was this. Yeah, it's like a little board gamey style thing, but it's about 3 foot by a foot long, I guess, and each person at the other end has a little gun that fires ball bearings, and you got to fire them at another ball bearing that's encased in a little plastic circle, so it acts as a hockey puck, and you have to knock that puck into the other person's goal at the other end. Really simple, but so tactile that it was really good fun. And
There's another
that's
game like that. Sorry, what was it? You had castles and you had little men that you put on. I guess not flippers, but if you hit, so you had a crossbow which fired projectiles, and then if you hit a door of the castle turrets, the men would like flip off the top. Crossfire reminded me of that. I'm going to Google it whilst. Sorry, I've jumped in and just trampled
No, that's
all over
cool.
what you were saying. It brought back another childhood memory.
I think a lot of that kind of stuff is the only kind of video game equivalent, really, are the old Sega cabs and some of the Namco ones that threw you around. And some of them edged on gimmickry, but some of them were genuinely good. And I loved Afterburner and Space Harrier, particularly for that kind of thing. That tactile feedback was
Yeah.
fantastic. And
I remember
but,
going in
yeah.
an Afterburner cabinet that had like almost like a simulator. It would spin you around and stuff like that as you was playing. That was probably not as impressive as my mind remembers it, but yeah, it proper tried to throw you around as you was moving, and it had all the hydraulics and everything. That was just amazing when I was younger.
The
Yeah.
game that I was thinking of as a youth was crossbows and catapults, which I should have really got from the fact that you have a giant crossbow.
So biggest issue I've ever had with pinball, and it's really weird. I remember my mum would take me to the arcade. I played the pinball there, and it was great. And one birthday, I think it was, she got me a pinball table for at home, one of those crappy little battery operated ones. And that is probably the most disappointing gadget I've ever had.
Really, I even those I kind of think, they're quite cool. I don't know if it's just because they're retro and simple, but yeah.
I don't think I got a good one. I think I got literally probably one you'd find someone selling out of the back of a lorry on the market.
With a cardboard base and...
Yeah.
I think loads of us would love a real pinball machine, and then see how long it took before the neighbours called the police because of the noise that it generated.
I've looked a couple of times and then just realised that how
impractical it is.
Impractical, and also obviously you've got to have probably a high level of engineering skills to maintain it. But yeah, the cost itself is just so prohibitive.
Yeah, although it's one of my dream setups is the one arcade cabinet I've always wanted is a 4-player Daytona, and then a pinball table. So go on, Stu, what you've been playing?
Yeah, so the first one is Beautiful Desolation, which is a game from a couple of guys from South Africa. They kickstarted it about 3 years ago, so it has taken that full amount of time right up to the wire to get it out and ready for the public, which is fair enough because it's just two of them working on it, and it's like an adventure game in a isometric viewpoint where you control a little guy wandering around and working out what's going on in the world. And the world setting is, I won't get into too much detail, but it's a kind of futuristic setting that you've been thrust into in the manner of that game I am not going to remember the name of. So the guy who wrote Ex Machina, what's he called?
You thinking of Alex Garland?
Alex Garland, that's him. What was that game that he did where it's the future but everything's overrun, so it looks really pretty? Looks a bit like The Last of Us, but it was before The Last of Us.
Oh, Enslaved.
Enslaved. That's
Yes,
what I was
Odyssey
thinking
to
of.
the West. That was absolutely outstanding, that game.
Right.
I'm very underappreciated.
Cool. Right. So think about Enslaved and The Last of Us, of that kind of future world where everything's gone to pot, but it's become beautiful because it's become overrun, and the technology that's left around is rusted and ancient, but quite beautiful. The game itself, I've played for about an hour and a half, and at the moment, on a personal level, I'm really not enjoying it. I'm going to give it some more time, but it really is just, at the moment, walk to point A, get told something that can be interesting, the lore of the land and stuff, the rules of the place and the history of the world that you're now living in, which seems to be hundreds of years in your future. And the creatures, the people and the robots and cyborgs you meet are very intriguing. And it uses a really good dialogue system that seems to be a mix of regular English, of South African slang, and Afrikaans, which is based on Dutch, the Dutch language. So that's interesting. But from a gameplay perspective, all you're kind of doing is going and getting told one bit, told to pick up a part, go and get that part, go to another part of the map, drop that part, get told you need another part, and then repeat. And that's literally, it's very, very pretty. But that's literally all that's happening at the moment. There's no puzzles. I didn't expect combat. Wasn't coming into it for that. I was coming into it for good story, and the story does seem to be good. But yeah, there's actually no game at this point, really. So I'm going to give it more time, but at the moment, it's disappointing me a bit.
And this is a full release, isn't it? It's not early access
Yeah.
or anything like that. See,
Correct.
that's really strange because this is through the guys who done Stasis, which I found absolutely enthralling throughout. I thought the gameplay loop in it was really good. It's even though it was point and click in nature, this one it felt more of a game than a lot of other point and clicks do. It just felt really good. So to hear that the team that was behind that haven't quite managed to get the gameplay loop right in this it's a shame to hear, actually.
Well, it's purely my personal perspective, and it could well be wrong, because I'm quite slow picking these things up. So, like, as it's not normally my wheelhouse, I tend to kind of prod into every corner, and that slows everything down quite significantly. And there may be a kind of min-maxy way of doing it where you understand what's required of you much more quickly and you go through the plot beats more quickly. You probably, zoom through that sort of stuff and engage with whatever the core gameplay loop was. For me, I feel excluded from a core gameplay loop at the moment. It's literally just collecting things that are very obviously signposted and then putting them into another obviously signposted place. So fingers crossed it'll develop from there.
Philip, how far in are you? Did you say that? Like in terms of hours?
About an hour and a half. So I got
You could still be within the introductory phase then.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's just opened up the map, and I've been to a few areas of the map in the transport that you're given, and at each one there are locked out parts to it. So it's like, oh, cool. Yeah, I'm not ready for that bit yet, and then go to it, explore other bits. But it may just be that it's not for me. But we'll see. I'm going to persevere, and I'll come back in following weeks and say how I felt.
Fair enough. I know you've been playing something else as well. We'll come back to that, but I just quickly want to touch on two of the smaller titles I've been playing over the past week before I get to my main one. One is Voxelgram, and it's basically 3D Picross. If you like Picross, then it's absolutely outstanding. If you ever played Picross 3D or Picross 3D Round 2 on the 3DS, then it's basically a budget version of that, but not a budget version in a bad way. It's got 170 puzzles that get more and more complicated as you go, but I absolutely love Logic games, especially Picross. It's my second favourite behind Sliverlink. And on Picross games, I can't talk about it this week because I think the show goes out before the embargo is up. But I've also been playing Murder by Numbers, which is a visual novel merged with Picross to make something pretty unique. But I'll talk about that next week. And the other smaller title I've been playing is MX Nitro Unleashed, which I got. It came out of absolutely nowhere. And I thought it was going to be a trash tier shovelware cash in that was trying to be like Trials HD, Trials Evolution. But what I got was a 2D motocross stunt racing game that is absolutely joyful to play. It's available for less than a tenner. And yeah, it's one of those great feelings that when you get a game come out of absolutely nowhere and it presses all the right buttons, that does it. That's MX Nitro Unleashed. I recommend picking that up if you have a Switch, a PS4, or an Xbox. But yeah, Stu, so you've been playing Bloodstained as well.
I have. So that was another Kickstarter, although I didn't go in on that one. Bit of background, it's by Koji Igarashi, who was the guy who took over as like the creative director and designer of the Castlevania franchise. He was involved in Symphony of the Night, which is the one everyone holds up as the apex, but he also did like Circle of the Moon and Aria of Sorrow on the handhelds. And yeah, it got successfully kickstarted, and it's become a bit of a phenomenon, and it's on PC Game Pass and Xbox Game Pass as well, I think. And I just love it. Loved it because I've completed it now. Absolutely fantastic from start to finish for me. So what what I found with the older games, the only thing that I would have sort of complained about a little bit, like maybe got a little bit stale, was the fact that like you're constantly picking stuff up because it's essentially an old school platform game. So you're constantly getting collectibles. And some of that stuff you'll go into your inventory, you'll equip it, you'll go, yeah, that bumps my stats up a little bit. Okay, I'll do that. And then some stuff, you got this list of like 500 items that are just fit for the bin because they've been superseded. And that's like the equivalent of technical debt. You don't want it hanging around. It's just pointless. And it smacks of a little bit of redundant design as well. So in Bloodstained, what's really great is every item that you get has a purpose. They're all functional, but not everything is essential. Some is, but items are either they're useful on their own basis, or they're useful in combination with another item, or as an ingredient or a component, or they're useful when buffed by another item, at the very worst, they can be disassembled for sale. But most of the time, you won't even need to do that. So, like for example, you'll get seeds, and you can grow those seeds, and then you can use those for food, or there'll be a component in something else, and nothing feels like it's wasted. And what that means is because it's a Metroidvania and your exploration is the thing, and you're going back through old areas quite frequently, it means killing things rather than avoiding them, and therefore, engaging in the action part of the game. It actually has a point. So it's worth killing things over and over again because they have different drops and there's a lot of variety with those. And whatever they give you is going to have use in some way or another. So you constantly feel like you're doing something that there's a point to doing and that there's fun in doing that as well. Other than that, it's like the best Metroidvanias, really. Or they also call them Igavanias because of the guy Koji Igarashi. It's got all of those great points. So lovely design, brilliant enemies. The visuals are so in my opinion, but it's a Kickstarter game. You can't expect too much. But the level design and the sound effects and the enemies are all excellent, as you'd expect from the designer of the best Castlevania games. And I really can't recommend it enough. Everybody in the world has probably played it by now who had any interest in it. But if you're one of the 0.2% who haven't, then I highly recommend playing Bloodstained Ritual of the Night.
Ben, are you one of the 0.2%?
Actually looked at it in the last PS4 sale and didn't buy it. So yes, I haven't played it. Although I have been playing a game with a tiny bit of a Metroidvania element to it, just briefly. So after Titanfall 2, which is spectacularly brilliant, I finally got around to starting Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order even. And it's okay. It's a bit of a shame. Coming off Titanfall 2, which is just so fast paced and so solid, it's slightly disappointing that while Fallen Order is a good game, it's incredibly frustrating in parts and full of quite a bit of jank. And I think reviews said on release towards the end of last year that it was kind of unfinished and needed another 6 months of development. But
Whoa. This is an EA title we're talking about. They are bastions of quality, I'll have you know.
But yeah, so it is disappointing, and I think that's amplified by the fact that now the game is 6 months old, 5 months old, and we're on. I've got version 1.07, and it doesn't feel particularly robust. Like obviously some games release and then within a couple of weeks, even a month or so, they're much more solid. Any problems that they had at launch are ironed out, but yeah, I've read that the team are already working on a sequel. So whether it's just a kind of we got that out there, it's actually sold very well. So we're kind of, if people are happy enough to keep playing it, then we'll just move on to the next one. But yeah, hopefully the sequel will be a bit more polished and a few quality of life improvements. But the gameplay itself, it's fine. I think I've never really played a Souls game. So yeah, I've struggled a bit with the parrying, but it's not as in depth or certainly as punishing as what I'm led to believe a Souls game might be. And you can kind of fumble through it on the regular difficulty setting, but Yeah, on the whole, it's probably one of those games you'd put 7 out of 10. But say off the back of Titanfall 2, which Respawn obviously made and is so good, it was a bit of a come down.
But anyway, I've also been playing and been absolutely enamored with, and it's a game I've been waiting for quite a long time to hit consoles. But 2 Point Hospital. Now I know, I think Ben, you said you've never played Theme Hospital.
I generally sim management style games. The only one I really played was SimCity, and that usually involved me just putting the cheat code for unlimited money and building a town, and then getting bored after about 10 minutes.
Stu, have you played Theme Hospital?
I have not. No, I've played almost no sim constructy management type games in my life, really.
But you're aware of what Theme Hospital is and Theme Park and all those sort of games.
Yeah.
It's almost like an alien concept, I suppose, to us in the UK. But obviously, in America, running a hospital, it's a business. So the idea with Theme Hospital is you build a hospital. What you've also got to do is make sure you're balancing the books. And there's a lovely humour in the game as well. So you've got like one of the early issues you get is called Mock Star, and that's people come into your hospital and they believe they are like an 80s rock star, and they all look like Freddie Mercury. So you have to send them to go and see a psychiatrist who basically talks to them, and then they stop looking like Freddie Mercury and go back to themselves. And that's the kind of humour you get. So what's really good, instead of going with that gallows humour and having actual diseases and illnesses, which would be a bit morbid, gives them all fun illnesses and diseases. They can still die from them, but it's a lot more light-hearted. With 2 Point Hospital, I've just found it really, really relaxing. It's essentially it's by the people who made Theme Hospital, but under their now indie studio of 2 Point Games, and it feels like the sequel I've wanted for so long, but with a crap ton of quality of life improvements to it. I don't think it's going to sell it to people who haven't played it. So, like Ben, I don't think all of a sudden you're going to see this and decide that this is for you. But it is for those who like these sort of games. It is absolutely spectacular, and I believe it is on Xbox Game Pass as well. But it's absolutely superb. There'll be obviously a review by the time you listen to this. There's a review on the site, and I gush about that game a lot. What we're going to talk about today is money and the effect it has on mental health. Now, for me, I've never been in a position where I've had money, and a lot of my issues when it comes to mental health come through not being able to do certain things, or worrying, can I put food on the table, can I afford rent this month? At the same time, money is very contradictory in that it doesn't automatically stop people getting depression or getting anxiety. Have either of you guys had any issues where you feel money has been the root of, or could be the solution to any of the issues you have or have come across?
Different people have different emotional attachments to money, and I'll be honest, that's something I've never really had. Like whether it's because I grew up in a 2-bedroom flat, but in quite a nice part of London. I wouldn't say that I've always had money, but it's never really been an issue in a sense. It's not impeded me or really been a motivator even. And I think this day and age, it's more and more apparent that money it simply doesn't insulate people from problems. Anxiety, self-esteem, they won't really be helped by having more money, despite what many people might think. Yes, it can alleviate specific stresses, like you mentioned, having to food on the table, those kind of day-to-day worries, but it's not a cure for stress on the whole.
Yeah, my own ambitions, and when it comes to my mental health, I don't want to be rich. I don't want to sit on piles of money. All I want, and for me personally, is I want to be at that level where, again, it's just a case of I haven't got to worry about where a meal's coming from, or say whether I can pay my rent. So and that I think is where everyone should be, where you can just comfortably get through life. on that side of it. And then, I'm not saying that's going to eliminate, I say, any kind of mental health problems you have, but if it allows you to then focus on being able to deal with the issues you do have and not have to worry about those other things, I think that becomes a lot better for being able to focus on what you need to do to improve yourself.
Don't think it'll
Um,
change. I think if you've got an inherent, like I'm naturally anxious. I think if I had more money, I'd still be naturally anxious. That's not going to fix it. I just think I do get what you're saying. Like you have more money to put food on the table and whatnot. Like I said, it's going to alleviate those stresses, but you'll find other ones.
oh yeah, no, definitely 100%. Um, but I think what is really interesting is it does come from there are almost three different levels of money obsession. So you've obviously got the ultra rich who obsess over money because they've got some money, but they want all the money, and they want more of it, more of it, more of it. You've got the poor who want money because they see what the ultra rich have, and so they obsess over getting money, but for very different reasons. But they said you've got people, a lot of people who are then in the middle, where they're neither going to be rich, but they're okay enough. They're never going to be, poverty stricken at the same time. And I think you can hear the difference in attitudes between me and yourself when it comes to money. And no way am I saying that my opinion on it's right, yours is wrong, and the same as you're not going, well, I'm right, you're wrong. But it does just go to show, I think sometimes the way we look at money does really come from the association we have with it. And
I mean, I've not
I
earned an income for a year, but it hasn't really changed my perspective.
yeah,
But it's not going to change. Like I've been in a position where I've earned a tax-free salary for a while. That's finished. But I went through a divorce in that period and had my lowest mental state. Like money,
yeah.
fuck all to do with that. Like it didn't solve it. It didn't fix it.
No, and again, as I say, it's a lot of the issues I have. When I was getting bullied at school, that money wasn't going to fix that. I was a target for whatever reason, and having money wasn't going to change that. Money isn't going to change the the issues I have with self-loathing. But yeah, it's always a weird one. There's so many different ways people approach money.
It is entirely situational, isn't it? I mean, one thing we haven't talked about is gambling, and for some people that's a huge thing that's both tied into mental health, and also tied into the amount of money you have in your pocket and whether you should be spending that. And it's almost in a way encapsulates how traditional capitalism wants you to behave. It's like, make sure you acquire enough so that you can just fritter it away in whichever way you want. And that's the capitalist stance. Whereas for an individual, it's like very often they're in a desperate state mentally, and their only release or relief is by gambling with that slim hope that it will transform their life. And yeah, again, that's sort of tied to both the individual and how they can become addicted to something, and also the prominence that money's given, when really you should be able to have the attitude of, like Ben said, to me personally, money is not that important, and not have society judge you for it.
Mm. In terms of the mental health discussion, it shows that there isn't a one answer fits all way to fix things or to answer things.
It's like you say, it's entirely situational, isn't it? And you two guys have got a different situation, and I have too. And also talking about gambling, which, just to say, I'm not a gambler. It's just I've talked to people in the past who, it always surprised me when it came up, because I never think of it, and it's just one of those things. Oh yeah, God, yeah, that would just that could wipe out everything you have in minutes. And it was just something that I never thought about. And then people would talk to me about the impact it had on their life, and I'd be like, I never even thought about it. And yeah, it just goes to show, like you say, how situational it is.
Yeah, as I say, we haven't come up with any answers in this discussion, but again, that discussion doesn't need to come up with answers. But that's not what we're here for. It's hopefully just showing again it's okay to talk about these things, regardless of your opinion. The gambling side of it, actually, I think that's a really good overall discussion to have another day. It's, I mean, again, I don't gamble, but I don't gamble because I know I've got an addictive nature, and I hate to imagine where I would go with that. But yeah, that's a discussion for another day. So, unless, guys, you got anything else to add to this one?
Not from my side.
Stu?
No, nothing more, I think.
Excellent. So, obviously, we'll wrap up as usual. If you like what you listen to, you find it helpful in any way, please do share where you can, subscribe where possible, like it where possible. We'll be back next week. I've been Bradley. I've been joined by Ben and Stu. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.